in those days. So imagine this boy returning home, hoping against hope that his dad's going to show some compassion to him. And when he gets to the edge of the town, he sees this crowd, and he knows what that means. He knows it's not a welcoming crowd. He knows that it's a threatening crowd. And so as he's looking at this, he has to decide whether it's worth it. Is it worth the shame and the humiliation and the berating that he's going to undergo, not just that day, but probably forever? Is it really worth it? And just as he's saying, no, it's not worth it, and he turns around, his dad breaks through the crowd, and he embraces him, almost tackles him, because he wants him to know how much he loves him. And no matter what the crowd is saying, he loves him, and he accepts him, and he forgives him. He didn't want his son to endure the shame of the crowd, not even for a second. He wanted to make sure that everyone in the community knew that too. You know, the Apostle James wrote in his book that mercy triumphs over judgment, and I just wonder if he didn't have this story, the prodigal son, in the back of his mind, thinking about that. Henry Nouwen once said this. He said, compassion can never coexist with judgment because judgment creates distance and distinction that prevents us from really being with the other. Let me read that again. Compassion can never coexist with judgment because judgment creates the distance and the distinction that prevents us from really being with one another. You can't be a compassionate person and a judgmental person. That doesn't work. But compassion wasn't the norm in Jesus' day. Judgment was. So rather than kissing and embracing a wayward son in public, a typical Jewish father would make us sit on the edge of town and just wait, maybe for days, while his father decided whether or not he would accept him. And there was no guarantee that he would. If he did accept his son back, the son would have to first humble himself for years with hard labor, much like that Buddhist story that I mentioned. But for the father to run to his son, to show him compassion and welcome him back with no strings attached, that would have actually been an insult to both the older son as well as the whole village. It would be a way of rejecting what the mores or the ethos of the rest of the village. So this dad had to decide between mercy and judgment. What am I going to do? Am I going to show mercy? Or am I going to show judgment? The crowd, everyone in the church, so to speak, wants me to judge. But my heart tells me I should accept him. He's my son. I should show mercy. He had to choose between his younger son and his older son and the townspeople. And of course, he chose the younger son. Well, hearing this story must have made the Pharisees livid because, like I said before, they wanted to see judgment. But that was Jesus' point. Jesus was flying in the face of religion. He was purposefully shocking his listeners to get them to realize that God was not the God that they thought he was. God wasn't counting the sins of the people against them. God didn't keep sinners at a distance and have them earn their way back to get his favor through hard work. God was like this father, willing to make a fool of himself just to win back the people that he loved so much. And think about that. The father wasn't afraid of ruining his reputation or letting people get the wrong impression of him. And isn't that exactly what Jesus did when he went to the cross? He was willing to humiliate himself on our behalf just to win us back to God. He didn't care what the rest of the world said. He didn't care what the religious world said at that time.